I would like to invite Dr. Hanan Al-Basha, co-director of Founder Institute Qatar chapter and founder of the business director, our event partner, to introduce the institution, of course. And let me just say to Dr. Hanan and the Founder Institute team, congratulations on the launching and wish you all the luck. And at KiwiTech, we support you. So feel free to reach out to us in case that you need any kind of support regarding the mentorship. So over to you, Dr. Hanan, to present Founder Institute Qatar chapter.
There we go. Hi, Aisha. Thank you so much. Thank you, KiwiTech. Very excited to be here and to be sharing this panel with all the distinguished panelists here. As Aisha has introduced, I'm Dr. Hanan Al-Basha. I'm the co-director of the Qatar chapter of the Founder Institute. Founder Institute is the largest pre-seed accelerator in the world, stemming from Silicon Valley, started up in 2009 with the vision to empower impactful businesses and to actually give back to the economies in which they operate. So Founder Institute now constitutes or has chapters in over 200 cities around the world. The mentor network has exceeded 14,000 mentors, with a portfolio of about 5,000 companies at this point in time and a valuation of $30 billion. The 14-week program is meant to give structure to those aspiring to have a business that is preferably aligned with the SDGs of the United Nations, which are the Sustainable Development Goals, and gives them beyond that structure to their idea, structure to incorporating their business, traction beyond that. And of course, once they are graduates or alumni of the Founder Institute program, they get immersed into a network that spans, as we said, 200 cities, with opportunities for a lot of other programs that support them, such as funding, which is what we're talking about today. And of course, once you're in a network, you can also leverage it for co-directors, co-partners, CTOs, whoever you need to make sure that your business is sustainable and it's growing and it impacts not only the economy that you're operating in, but also the regional and even the international economy. So that is just a very brief overview of the Founder Institute. We are starting, we just launched, as Aisha was just saying, we launched our Qatar chapter. Our program runs from March to June as a 14-week program, and we are accepting application at this point in time. So if you are interested, it's fi.co/apply/Qatar. You will get more information about the program and more information on how to attend. Also, we have a series of events. We also are very pleased to actually have our panelists today as mentors with us. So Aisha's there, Steve's there, Audish is there. Everyone that will add to your entrepreneurial journey, we made sure to have them as part of your journey as well within the program and beyond the program. So thank you, Aisha.
Thank you, Dr. Hanan. Thank you so much and good luck. So now I would like to call Steve McKee, founder and co-owner of Business Startup Qatar, to begin the panel discussion and introduce our panelists.
Thank you, Aisha. And what a privilege it is to be here today, to be the moderator of this wonderful panel. So let me begin. Today is all about the rise of venture capital. But before I go into that, let me introduce myself, which I mostly forget. My name is Steve Mackey. I'm the founder of Business Startup Qatar, and I am the partner of Soutien Group, which we offer support to all shapes and sizes of companies here in Qatar. We've now branched out into Saudi Arabia and also into Oman. So that's my credibility. And I'm now going to introduce our panel before we get started. Dr. Hanan, very impressed, very, very impressed with that introduction. And I've been lucky enough that I've known Dr. Hanan because she's the business doctor. And if you've ever listened to her podcast, you would know just exactly how great she is. An amazing individual, empowering business strategist. And I think that summed you up beautifully, because you definitely empower people. So welcome to the panel today.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you so much for this.
And then I'll go on to Audesh. Audesh, it was a privilege speaking to you today. And I really did find out exactly what you are doing for the ecosystem here in Qatar. What an amazing job. You're part of Risen Ventures, covering 5 countries, including Qatar. You're involved in early investments. You work with the Digital Incubation Center on multiple levels. And let me say, you're doing a fantastic job there. And you've also helped with some of the biggest startups here in Qatar. You've helped Skip Cash, eButler, C-Wallet, just to name a few. Welcome to the show today. And yes, please.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be a part of the panel and at the event along with other esteemed panelists. And thank you for having me here.
Good on you. And it's a pleasure to have you here. And there's no need for my introduction here with Mohsin Saeed. He's a hero of mine. KiwiTech are heroes of mine because they empower so many people that's out there on multiple levels. And if you're listening today, this is just one of the ways that they do this. But honestly, do your research on them, get in contact with them, let them help you grow your business. Mohsin, thank you so much for being on the panel today.
Hey, it's like, coming to your own house party. So absolutely love it.
It's really good. So we're talking about the rise of venture capital in the Middle East. And I'm going to come straight to you with the hot potato, Mohsin. And I'm going to say to you, what is a VC?
Well, it's if I have to look at our definition of a venture capital, right? And I think it's right there, right? Partners in passion and purpose. And I think that's how we like to look at. Everybody has, a different definition and rendition of venture capital. Venture capital has evolved over the years. It means different things in different, regions, honestly. But I think at this point of time, the way we look at venture capital is someone who can believe and invest capital in part of a venture that might have its set of risks, but it's at the end of the day, it has to do with a venture that's driven by people for an extended, purpose. So as venture capitalists, I think there is a lot more to the capital that you bring in, because a lot of venture capitalists are investing in people even before the business has enough traction and so forth. So a long-winded definition of venture capital is someone who invests capital in people, who are passionate about, an overarching purpose, and that's what I would define as venture capital.
Yeah, and you're probably you're leading the way with KiwiTech when it comes to individuals and businesses. And you've got your own style and your own way of doing it, but it's all about relationships, right?
Right, because the way we looked at venture capital even 10 years ago, even in a mature ecosystem like the US market, where we are originally from, and still, I would say 95% of our 500 plus portfolio companies are from the US, right? So when we looked at that, we felt that, a lot of these startups, as they go from, our mission was to focus on taking as many startups from seed to Series B. As much we would love to look at the unicorn, style. We are big believers in that we could create tremendous value for everyone in the food pipe if we're able to take as many startups from seed to Series B. So that's the definition of how we did it, and we realized that for seed stage startups, it's not just capital. You can throw a bunch of money, but what does it lead to? Right. So we felt that, for a startup to be successful and go from that initial seed stage to Series B, you need to have a ton of things work out right. First is the team, next is the technology, then capital and funding, go-to-market strategy, mentorship, corporate partnerships. So there's a whole abundance of things that needs to go right for that, little bit of, luck that comes along the way to make that happen. So we believe in what we call it as being an integrated ecosystem of ventures, wherein we look at how we could bring certain sort of, direct impact to startups through our own channels, and then partner, with institutes like, we have partnered with Founder Institute chapters across the US. We're partnered with, VCs, family offices. So yes, so we believe that if we could become like a systems integrator of partnerships, relationships, and provide that holistic journey experience for startups, then the amount of support system that they would have in terms of bodies, in terms of people, in terms of, businesses, I think that would be a lot more wholesome for them to go from seed to Series B.
What has been the growth? And everybody talks about the growth of the VC in the Middle East right now. What's that growth that you've seen in the last few years?
What's been noticeable is that there is an awareness, and I think it's more of a collective awareness in the region. And that is stemming, I mean, if we look at, let's step back, let's look at the role of startups that become SMEs. So I'm going to look at the SMEs. SMEs constitute 90 to 99% of worldwide economies. What does that mean? It means, yes, we've got the big corporates, of course, and we've got the big names, and they have the bigger money and the bigger chunk of the economy. But what's the role of startups and SMEs? They are the ones that drive innovation. They drive employment. They drive the agility of the markets. And what we have seen with the pandemic over the last couple of years, agility and adaptability were the secret ingredients to survivability. So putting that, then we have seen the region rising up to saying, hang on a second, startups are important for us to start, well, first of all, of course, having a role within the international and global markets, but also it is driven by technology, it is driven by funds and by support. So if we look at the overall entrepreneurial ecosystems within the region that are coming up, we can divide them into 3 E's. We have the entice, so people are starting to say, hang on a second, what's startups, what's entrepreneur, and what's funding, and how can I get a chunk of that? And then we have the educate, and that's again where mostly it is the governments that started saying, okay, there are incubator programs, there are pre-seed accelerators, there are other VCs and angel investors coming up. And then we have the enablers. And I think for the VCs, they are enablers. What do we mean by that? They're the ones that support those dreams coming up. They're the ones that are able to invest in the aspirations of individuals or groups of individuals, saying, we can support you to go farther and to keep going for as long as you can. So I think the rise is because, again, globalization or the connectivity of us through technology has opened up this field to say, we can't not play. We can't not be part of this bigger game where we're all connected and we're all aspiring. And I think the collective vision of the region right now is to create more unicorns that come out of the Middle East.
You say unicorns, and it's like there's such a growth across the Middle East with the venture capital people. Is that because they can see the potential now with all these companies that are coming to fruition, and then realizing that it is the SMEs that are going to drive the business forward in the future?
Yes, and that is mainly because as well, we started noticing the trends going beyond the energy fields and the real estate fields. I think with the 2008, there were a lot of teachings, or the crisis, or the collapse, or whatever we want to call it, the financial crisis that happened at that point in time. There were lots of learnings, and expanding into different segments and sectors started becoming a necessity. And that's where the variety of other options and segments that technology-enabled businesses or technology-based businesses are starting to kind of become very, let's say, viable and attractive as well.
Yeah, and I know that VCs are going to bring cash, but I'm going to go to you now, Audish. What is the value that VCs bring, or what you should be looking at to what they bring?
See, essentially, venture capital as an asset class is a high risk, high growth, investor, class. So essentially, most venture capitalists are typically looking at high, hockey stick growth. So you're looking at multi-bagger returns. You're looking at startups which could go 40x, 50x, and that's how the entire VC industry is structured, especially for funds who come in very early. So they the way they deploy their funds is they spread the risk across, say, 20, 30 startups, and they know for sure that at that stage, the guarantee of returns and success is fairly low. But then they bet on trends, they bet on market opportunities, they bet on founder teams, and and the fact that they see that there could be a clear exit strategy around them. So venture capital is something which is built around innovation, growth, and opportunity. So in the region, if you see, I think, and as some of the other panelists said earlier, there are two key drivers. There's definitely a market opportunity in the Middle East, which is coming up untapped. And there is the large digital adoption opportunity, especially after COVID. If you see, adoption in the digital space is very high. And venture capitalists see this return, see this opportunity. I think the markets are booming. Startup investment has gone through the roof more than any time else. Middle East itself has seen about $1.5 billion of startup money over the last year. So I think the horizon is the limit. So we see that we're in the right space, investing into markets which probably have startups which are undervalued. So valuations in similar markets like in India, if you look in the US, valuations have gone sky high. Middle East, we still have very attractive valuations. And so these are growth markets which a lot of VCs are tapping. And unlike a few years back, where you see that investors and VCs are very geographically focused, you'll see that money is moving around. You have money from China in the Middle East, you have money from the US in the Middle East, and and funds from all over the world co-invest in deals in the Middle East. So things are changing. I'm sure there's a lot of good times ahead. 22, 23 look very bright.
It is looking very good, and again, there is a kind of magnificent growth across the region. With the VCs, Mohsin, what should, if I was a startup right now, or I was a business that I was going to go and try to raise some capital from a VC, what are the key? What should I be looking for? I know that sometimes we could be quite intimidated if we were going to look, but what should those startups, those businesses look for from a VC? Not just finance, but what are those key services that they can bring? Because they do, a lot of these VCs provide so many different services.
Right. So I think one of the things, just like expanding on what Avdesh and Dr. Anand just mentioned, I think if you look at, I mean, just purely from a more general entrepreneurial mindset, right? You have the MENA population, which today is about 400 million, right? Roughly. And I believe 1/3 of them are under the age of 15. And almost like, I think it's another crazy 60 or 70% of them, which are under the age of 35. And you have the whole, 4G, 5G penetration almost up to 100%. So, I mean, you're looking at, I think previously back in the day when VCs used to look at Middle Eastern MENA startups, and they used to look at, okay, because TAM is such a, it's such a critical piece of whatever a VC would look at. Today, you've got a phenomenal TAM, right? Now, the key is, are you as a startup, what are you focusing on, Because a lot of the VCs who come into Middle East, to Avdesh's point, they look for collaboration. They're not usually trying to be, solo flighters. They want to look at which other VC or which other, partner that they can partner with in a joint investment opportunity. Very few of them go solo, So there is, a lot of support system that they're looking to provide in expanding your TAM, So if it is a business model that has, in some of the startups that I've looked at across MENA, I think the natural secondary markets, could be the US or Europe, and that's very comforting for VCs who are coming in to collaborate and investing in these regions. So I think as an entrepreneur, or and some of them do not necessarily have to expand beyond the region, because the region has got such a high TAM that you could become a potential unicorn just by playing it right within that region, even being the second, the third, or the fourth player in that region. So I think entrepreneurs have to be true to their TAM, understand why a potential VC is coming into, or why would you want to talk to them, because I think a lot of time we miss the homework. What is the underlying interest for a venture capital from outside the region to come and invest into that region? They sometimes are just looking at expanding their own, risk profile by partnering and investing in opportunities that they could potentially, look for M&As. And because if you look at venture capitalists, the other thing that you're looking for is what's my M&A, or is there an IPO game, right? Now I look at, now the IPO scene is where I think the Middle East needs to really, beef up over the next, few years, because you have if you look at the whole Indian startup success story, that's a lot connected to what the IPOs and the stock exchange markets have performed for them and for those startups. So I think while the IPO scene in the Middle East will take its course of time, I think if you look at M&As, that's where a lot of VCs are coming in to look at, hey, can I go and acquire a certain startup in a fintech space or in a healthcare space that will be complementary to some of my investments in other regions? And then, so I think if entrepreneurs look at a more extended, study of the VCs that have investment opportunities, in other regions and try to do a mapping exercise. So I think the MENA startup entrepreneurs today have a lot more capital that's looking their way, but they have to be true to some of the basics. Look at your TAM, look at the scale of economies, and also be, know who your customer base is, not just in your primary markets, but are there customer base in the secondary markets that you could tap into. So it's a combination of few things, but you'd rather have too many options on your plate than not have many options on your plate.
Dr. Hanan again. What are venture capital investors looking for within the Middle East? What are those hot topics, hot areas where they're really getting into?
I think let's look at from the VC perspective. The basic line would be, I'm looking to invest in a business that is sustainable and that is scalable. And what does that mean? It means, first of all, scalable means that it can be expanded to other markets, whether it can be localized to other markets or not. Sustainable is, I'm not going to invest in something that it kind of disappears. The concept of it becomes untrendy or disappears within 1 to 3 years. So these are the two basic elements. Beyond that, what would they be looking for? We have a rise in the region that is becoming kind of really let's say the sectors or the topics that are coming up, such as EdTech is becoming a big thing. Health tech is also picking up. We've seen, I think Medi was one of the first companies within Qatar that gets invested in, and it's in the health tech sector, and it got invested in from Africa. So they got venture capitalists from Africa being interested in what they're doing and helping them scale. Within Qatar itself, we have sport tech. That is an up and rising kind of field. Why? Because Qatar's vision has been focusing on the education and sports as the main pillars. Of course, fintech and everything else is coming up. And I think fintech, if we look at the bigger umbrella, fintech as in finance technology is where everything else fits in. If you don't have fintech, then all the other tech-based businesses will not be able to function to the best of their ability. So that is from both the perspective of, as a venture capitalist, what am I looking for? I'm looking for an idea, as from that perspective, they will be looking for any ideas or businesses that they can support in the long run. And from the entrepreneurial perspective, they have to look at businesses that are in alignment with what the region is. And why is that? Because then, as Mohsen was saying, we're looking at collaboration. You don't have to do it by yourself, but merging possibly with someone else that has a similar idea or someone that could leverage what you have as technical competences, then you're looking at the bigger game and you're creating a bigger nucleus to be more attractive for VCs.
If I was with being a startup, and what should I be considering to make sure that I've got in place before I start approaching you guys?
So I think startups approach investors at different stages. So if you're an early startup, you would approach with, typically a deal room with documents around your team, your experience, your maybe early success if you've got a couple of early customers, and then your pitch, your projections on financials, and make sure that this really clicks to investors. So at different stages, like for example, I'm raising funds at a seed stage, or I'm raising for Series A or Series B. The kind of documentation I prepare, the pitch I prepare, varies across those stages. But generally, I think the fundamentals remain that I have to show some high growth opportunity for an investor. I have to, if I'm late stage, I have to show a clear exit route. In terms of if I grow, how am I acquiring customers, what's my traction, what's my customer retention, and those fundamentals. But typically, the way startups do is you put together a deal room, you have a business plan, you put your financials, You build your projections over the next 2 to 3 years to to tell the investor that, yeah, I've done my homework, I've done my market research, and I understand the overall opportunity. And typically for startups in Qatar and one of the Middle Eastern countries, it's important that you show a large target access market, because consumer numbers, if you're say a consumer startup, and if you're born out of Qatar, with a population of about 2 million, you cannot convince a customer investor to invest with a very small target access market. So you look at those fundamentals of total addressable market, and eventually, if you're able to show some traction with an MVP or some early customer success, that essentially drives the success. It's very important to be innovative, to look at the trends in the market as a startup. It's very important to look at where is VC money going, and when you pitch to an investor, look at the kind of investor you're pitching at, right? So do your research. So the investors would invest at different stages. There are investors, who are probably ending their funds. So you're towards, closing your fund. So you might be raising a new fund. So might not be able to do a big round. The investors who are very sector, focused. So investors who invest only in healthcare, or they're social impact investors. So you need to do your research, and then the way you approach investors is likely, through right forums and platforms. And I'm sure, platforms like KiwiTech and incubators. So there are a lot of incubators in Qatar, government incubators with a lot of support to startups locally. So choose the right platform, reach your investors, impress them, with all the right fundamentals. And there are a lot of tools available. So use the right tools, build your plans, financials, and present to the customer. So that's what I can say. But I think eventually your documentation and pitch varies depending on where you are, what stage you are, kind of round you're raising, and whom you're pitching. So
I do love that, especially from a market research perspective. Know who you're pitching to, know exactly what you want to get from it all, and be confident, and get involved with as many people as you possibly can. Keep on getting yourself out there. Mohsin, I know that you would have so much experience in this. Where does startups, or where does these businesses make the common mistakes?
Well, sometimes, I think it's in the fundamentals. I think of late, I've seen a lot of investors and VCs appreciate just blatant honesty. You don't have to go to them showing all but beds of roses. I think startups and investors understand that you need capital to fix some of your problems. So be honest about the problems that you're facing, the challenges that you're facing. Tell them what's right, tell them what's going on well, tell them, but also I think you need to have an equal blend of what the business has done right so far, what's the opportunity, and where is their inherent problem, because they know that the capital is to fix some of the problems. So if you don't carve out your problem statements, if you're not honest to them about areas of risk for your business, then I think the odds of today getting capital is far lower, because I think today there's so much data points about your business, than one can imagine. So the VCs have that at the fingertips. They've done their homework. So they appreciate people who are honest about, the areas of risk, the areas of their problems, the areas of the shortcomings. So I think that's one common mistake that a lot of entrepreneurs make. Unrealistic targets. Yes, you have to set, extremely, extremely solid targets that people feel good about it. But at the same point of time, if you're telling me that you did $100,000 in revenue this year and you're going to do 10 times the revenue next year, well, make a solid case for it. It might be true. I'm not saying it might not be the truth, but I'm not expecting it. So even the VCs and investors do have a trajectory expectations. They expect, even for a fast growing startups, they expect them to grow at a certain stage. So make sure that your growth strategy and the growth numbers are consistent, because, a lot of times I advise my startup entrepreneurs to say that, hey, if your story is too good to be true, then the odds of someone believing that it's going to be true, it's going to be very less, because they're going to say, you know what, let me wait and see for the next 6 months if that story is going to be that impeccably true, right? So they're going to wait, pass on the opportunity, and, rather than jumping in. So I think there should be, I would say, definitely optimism, but make sure that you're not going and overachieving or opening the numbers. I think that's another common mistake. And one of the things, I wouldn't say it's a mistake, but I think a lot of entrepreneurs shy away from doing a due diligence on their investors. Today, a lot of investors are mature enough to appreciate and actually acknowledge the fact that an entrepreneur is going to ask them, hey, why are you investing in me? What is that you see? What is that you could offer? I think a lot of VCs, actually mature VCs, get a lot of confidence when someone asks you that question. So just because someone is giving me money, just do not take it. But I mean, go behind the intentions, because this is a very critical piece of your business. You want to be associated with the right people. You want to be associated with smart money. So I think a lot of entrepreneurs shy away from doing a due diligence on their investors, asking the questions, asking, things about, like what, I mean, I think it's a fair trade, like you're giving away a big percentage of an opportunity that you have dreamt, you have filled it with passion. It's your baby. Someone wants a piece of it. As parents, you would definitely ask those questions. So I think cross due diligence is very crucial. We feel a lot of good startups who do that actually end up knowing responses that will kind of validate the whole due diligence process both sides. So due diligence has to be is mutual in many ways. And I think one last point I would say is that and put forth the team. Sometimes founders do not emphasize the quality of team that's around them. Sometimes it's always a story about I, and then the investor at the back of the mind is thinking, oh, that's too much of risk on one person. If you are not talking great about your own team, then the odds of you as a business being perceived is not going to be high. That's another very common mistake that a lot of entrepreneurs believe that since they are the ones who are sitting in front of the VC, sometimes it's not the entire team, they don't talk about how well the team complements each other. And that's what investors are looking at. They want someone who's going to be good on the marketing front. They want someone who's going to be good on handling the technology and product development, someone who knows the place where they're selling into. So I think talking about your team, why you picked this team, what makes you complementary, maybe there is someone that you do not have in the team that you need the money for, like a chief data scientist or whatnot. So I think talking about the team is another big area of focus that sometimes people talk about numbers, data, projections, Excel sheets, but they miss the most critical part why an investor is coming into, which is the people. So I think that's probably another area that a lot of startup entrepreneurs overlook when you're pitching to investors.
This all sounds simple. Simple, right? This does sound simple. It's kind of straightforward, but it's all about the preparation. It's all about the preparation. If you don't prepare, then how do you expect to stand in front of somebody and come out with all of this good information? Dr. Hanan.
I'd like to add something actually.
Yes, please.
I was just saying, you say it's all about the preparation, but also it's all about how do you keep a critical mind throughout the whole process? I think that I always tell when I'm working with entrepreneurs and they're at the startup stage, I say, ask yourself 3 whys. Why this? Why now? Why me? And I think this goes both ways, whether you are starting the business and you're kind of contemplating on the idea, or as Mohsen said, when you're being approached by a VC, then you're asking the same questions to them and to yourself. Keeping a critical mind throughout just kind of keeps you on your toes. Again, what Avdish was saying is also about the trends and what's happening in the market, being open and being, I think, not reactive, but being ready to take your business and pivot your business as how it's happening and as the market shifts and as the dynamics are shifting. Again, this was one of the major lessons we got out of the pandemic. If you're not going to be agile enough to shift the business focus and to leverage on the team that you've got, then you don't have a chance for survivability. And that is definitely a turnoff for any VC.
I thought you were going to take my question because it's come very close. I thought you were going to take my next question off me then. And I love the introduction that you've done, especially about the Founder Institute and the way that you teach them and the way that you go through things with them. How would you get somebody is going in front of a VC how would you get them prepared? How would you, what were the key things? And I mean the key things, not through the whole process, but the key things. And I know you touched on them briefly just now, but what would be those key things that you would say to them?
Well, definitely is just building up on what Audish and Mohsen have already shared. It's being prepared, it's having the right documentation, but you are not only selling your idea to them, or you're asking for them to take a stake and to take the risk with you. You're also selling your vision, you're selling your team, you are being prepared to also have them have a stake in this business that you are building. So that in itself is, are you ready for them, whether they're taking the controlling stake or not? Are you ready for someone else to be building this with you? So you need to be prepared by having the vision, like seeing where you want to go and be as aspirational as you want to be. But as Mohsen was saying, also being realistic with the numbers and with what you're pitching. What is a pitch? A pitch is basically, it's a PR stunt. So you're saying, you know what, I'm great, invest in me, invest in my vision. I can see this. I can see the gap in the market. I can see where customers are shifting. I can see trends. I can deliver. And I think that is the very important part as well, that they need to be prepared with. How are they going to deliver on that vision? We are seeing companies, and it's in the region right now, because we're seeing that spurt of companies becoming too big, too fast. Are they ready for that growth? Have they prepared their infrastructure, whether it's a technology basis, from the people perspective, from their customer centrism, meaning how they're prepared to deal with all the influx of comments, feedback, complaints? These are things that VCs would want to know, because again, back to the being it sustainable and scalable and profitable. So these are all elements they need to consider. These are the questions or the answers they need to prepare ahead of time, because these are the questions that they're going to be asked about. So
I'm kind of so glad that I'm coming on to this next question with you, Audish. And I'm going to put myself, I'm a startup now, an entrepreneur. I'm a visionary. I don't have time for all this business plan and market research stuff. I had something pop up on my screen there. I don't have time for this market research stuff. I just have a great idea. What should I do? And is that enough for me to go in front of a VC?
Yeah, I mean, investors expect you to work hard, to be diligent, and to present facts and fundamentals to be able to give you their money, right? So if you don't have time to do that bit, obviously they don't deserve the money. So you need to go through those steps. Like for example, you go to a bank and you want a loan, you fill your application, you go through a credit review process. So you need to get through those steps to win the confidence of an investor, for people to believe in you. And eventually, investment is just the start. I mean, the investors is going to be on the cap table, is going to be on the board of your company, is going to direct the vision and work with you for many years till you potentially can exit. So the fact is, if you don't have the time to put the fundamentals together, obviously you don't get the money, right? So startups need to be able to put all those fundamentals, present themselves well, and eventually win over those. I would definitely use the word win over, because it's very important, that you win the confidence and get investors on your side.
I know that we spoke this morning, and I just want you to kind of how you get your guys ready. I know that you've got something called the deal room. What do you do with your kind of people when you're trying to kind of raise these finances?
Yeah, so see, for us, we work in a very different format. We work as a venture builder, and we invest in very select startups every year, about 3 to 5 startups. And we have a very intensive program. So we essentially go about building tech. We also do go-to-market. We work very closely, with the startups in the early journey. But preparation across all the areas, right from technology. I think the fundamentals of how you should be doing the tech, fundamentals of your team, being able to prepare your team fundamentals, your financials are very key. So you look at your projections, be able to project the right growth. And investors have very well-defined financial metrics right? So so you should be able to present fundamental metrics, to your investors well, right? So if I see as an investor flat growth for a startup over the next 3 to 5 years, I wouldn't be confident of being able to get a good exit on that startup, right? So a startup should be in a dynamic, fast-growing opportunity and should be able to present those fundamentals or growth to an investors with the financials put together. So deal room, as you questioned, is set of documents, fundamental business plan, and which can, talks about the problem statement, talks about, the market opportunity, talks about your financial projections, talks about your team, and talks about, the larger opportunity you're working on. Okay, so the business plan captures a lot of that. Then you can have maybe some customer credentials, you can have some marketing collaterals, you can have your financials, structured. If you've been in business for a year or two, if you have some annual reports, if you have some financial documents, you can present them. So anything which you think which will impress your investor should be typically put together in the deal room. And there are certain defined formats, a lot of templates available which you could use to put these documents together and present them. So presentation is key. I mean, as a startup, you're telling a story. It's about storytelling. It's about conviction. It's about getting your investor to believe in you, and all of those fundamentals are important.
Perfect. And I'm going to go to Mohsin next. Mohsin, you've got experience over the whole of the Middle East, if not all over the globe, but you have your finger on the pulse, especially in the Middle East. What are the areas like Jordan, Oman, you've got UAE, you've got Saudi Arabia, you've got the other place, Qatar, obviously. What are those areas looking, what would you say that those areas are specifically looking in? Which industry? Is there something specific, or are they're covering all the same?
Well, I think, obviously, I think certain countries, because of their, background and, and I would say natural progression of, okay, what tech was adopted first, I think, of becoming more and more proficient. Like, for example, as Dr. Hanan said, ed tech and, sports tech is a pretty natural fit to what's happening in Qatar. But we also see that, they're slowly now surgence of health tech that's coming up as well. Now, if I look at some of the Egypt or Jordan markets, there's again a little bit of everything. The one thing that's enduring to see in some of these markets is more of a B2B play, because I think a lot of MENA has been kind of labeled as more B2C centric over these years, because of obviously the bigger names like Kareem and Souk and whatnot. But I think now we're seeing that there is an appetite for B2B models among entrepreneurs, because it has to start with innovation coming out in that space for VCs to follow in. There is a large, and this B2B, does not have to be just selling into large corporations. There's a big SME market. So your B2B models can basically target your SMEs as well. So that's part of the B2B model. So it's encouraging to see B2B models come up, which I think a lot of VCs, like ourselves, we are a big B2B play. So I think that's one thing that we're seeing. We're seeing, obviously, I think one of the areas where I think that holds a lot of promise and opportunity, which is also not going to be easy, is the whole fintech market. We're seeing that across the whole MENA, there is a very increasing leaning towards how do they, systemically, the ease of the financial regulations, and it's not an easy process. It's been it's more than centuries of business formalities, the way it's been engaged in. So kind of to go and change that industry will call for tremendous amount of innovation, tremendous amount of opportunities, tremendous amount of complexities. But I think fintech is another market that we are particularly excited about, and seems like the younger generation is more open to helping the whole fintech, come together. And I think, real estate, retail tech, and those are some of the other opportunities. But I think overall, if I look at the growth story of MENA, I think it's a very large digital population that today demands content, demands transactions, demands connections over a phone, over a digital medium. So that should give encouragement to startups, not just to confine themselves to the more popular, industry verticals. I think agri-tech, and I love some of the things that I've heard about agri-tech, both in Qatar as well as in other parts of MENA. So I think that's a huge market, and again, when the whole, situation, came up in Qatar the last, like 3 years ago, I think food sustainability, food security was a major factor that everybody gravitated towards and everybody worked towards. I think there is tremendous amount of scope for growth across various industry verticals that anybody who puts in, a very strong conviction, a great team, and especially coming from the region. InsurTech is another area where, a lot of people, we haven't seen much, and I'm hopeful. I've heard some, rumbles in the InsurTech space, which I think is again a huge space, for that region. So obviously, I think there is a lot of industry verticals that any entrepreneur who wants to get into, they now has an option for, more than anywhere else, in the world.
It's it's such a great region for growth right now, and it just seems to be growing so much. It's untrue. It's kind of with this whole growth process. What are those, Dr. Hanan? What are those areas, and what are the advice that you can give both to the venture people, the venture capital people that are going to start up here, and also any advice that you can give to these startups to look up and grab that opportunity?
I think we have to learn. We have to educate ourselves, which is again resonating what Audish and Mohsen had just shared. We don't exist in a bubble. We are part of the globe, and there are other regions that have kind of had a head start, especially within, for example, if we're talking about the startup and the VCs and everything, we've got the US. They're the oldest example in that perspective. From that perspective, we also have a lot of let's say success stories coming out of the Far East, out of Europe. We have to educate ourselves. We have to learn what is happening, what are the trends, where were the pitfalls before, and what worked. And from that perspective, then we start looking at trends and we start analyzing the data. We might not have a lot of data in the region yet, but I know this is also being changed with new reports and new players in the market that are working towards providing that data. But we have to look at the lessons from what has happened before. That being said, there is a lot of growth in the region, as you were saying, because we have the bigger percentage are under 35, and these are the ones that are very digitally active. Again, of the lessons from the pandemic was this was not a region that trusted a lot of the online commerce. They didn't have a lot of trust putting in their credit cards online, but this is also shifting. And even for those who still maintained, I'm not going to share my digital, I'm not going to expand my digital footprint. We had businesses coming up that are saying, okay, fine, we'll deliver on your behalf, we'll collect the money. And there were innovative ways of doing business that have emerged over the past couple of years. That is all to say that there's still a lot of room for growth, but we can't grow. Again, we can't grow in a void. We're not growing in a vacuum. We have to be immersed within the international ecosystem to leverage on it and to capitalize on it. So we're not starting from scratch. We're continuing from where the trends are, and we're continuing from where the growth is, just to be able to capitalize on it and to be able to grow faster than what it was expected if we're having this conversation 5 or 10 years ago.
The Middle East, and those parts of the Middle East that's got a lot of experience, but this is quite a new marketplace. This is still evolving, and that's what I like about the Middle East is that it's evolving so quickly, and it's evolving because of these types of things that we're running now. It's for the simple thing, the knowledge sharing is just incredible. Sometimes you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Sometimes you can look at what's working around the world and then be able to adapt it to the market, to the marketplace here. That's what I like about the Middle East. That's what I see the growth areas with yourself, Audish. How do you, because you are specializing, especially in Qatar. What do you see the improvements that have been made? Because I wanted to say something as well. 12 years ago, going back to you, Dr. Hanan, is it that I came over here, we just done an e-commerce platform. This is going back 12 years ago, and it was taking 1.8 million, very successful. And I thought that my world was going to change when we were going to bring e-commerce to Qatar. Nobody ever wanted, they just laughed at me. They laughed at me because it was not something that was going to be embraced. Now look at it, it could be a $3 million business place. It's going to be in the next few years. It's just incredible. Ordish, you're here in Qatar. What do you see those improvements and how you see it's going to improve and that's going to entice people to come here to set those businesses up?
I think we are in an early ecosystem. So Qatar is where, let's say, India was or US was 15 years back. So obviously the ecosystem is getting built up. But what I see as the significant improvement is there's a lot of government interest in building the ecosystem. So there are 4 or 5 prominent incubators in the country with government support who are running cohorts, who are running multiple programs to support and build the local ecosystem. So that's a tremendous impact. I mean, we work with one of the government incubators. People I know, other firms, they've been doing a lot of active work. And so we've seen, higher quality startups over the last couple of years. We've seen tremendous improvement in startups coming out of areas in fintech, in edtech, in e-commerce, and others. So eventually, the startup, ecosystem is building. Number of good startups are coming out. Venture money is also available. So you have money coming out, say, from QDB and others. There are a lot of family offices, there are angel investors, but very early, obviously there are drawbacks. You don't see a lot of follow-on money in the country. So we suggest our startups to go abroad and scout for, bigger rounds of money. They want follow-on Series A, Series B kind of funding. But the ecosystem is building, and I'm confident with the kind of support, the Qatar government is, providing, the vision the country has put together to build a local ecosystem. Has brought in a lot of impact. And I've seen that, firsthand because I've been mentoring with startups for the last 3-4 years. And I've seen that there are, much better, brighter startups. They have, better support. The regulatory framework has also improved. So, you have now, say, a sandbox environment at the Qatar Central Bank. You have better regulated startup, registrations. The MOCI has also brought in better regulation for the startups. So all of that is available. I've not seen instruments like safe notes and convertible notes being used in the country 2-3 years back. So we have the Mudharba and local convertible notes. So I think there are improvements in multiple areas, and I'm very confident with the kind of ecosystem and the country kind of vision Qatar has, that we'll see much more better startups come out of the country. And not just in consumer, I would bet on the non-consumer space, the B2B space, Mohsin was mentioning, because when you're there, you can actually build anywhere and go to the world, right? So when you're doing non-consumer, you're doing tech, you're building AI, so that's where, you can build some fantastic early traction in Qatar. Getting to get those pilots and MVPs with government support is very easy, and then you can go to the world selling your products. So it's not a very classic consumer market. So if you're in the consumer space, you need to be operating very differently. You need to be accessing, multiple countries, go from Qatar to many countries, right? But things have improved, and I'm confident that we'll see better improvement in the years to come.
The exciting thing, you spoke a lot about Qatar then. The exciting thing for me is that a lot of the leading was being done by the government in the different institutions. But now you've got lots of people, including yourselves, that are helping. But you've got the private sector coming through now, and they're starting the incubators. They're starting these. You can't have a VC right now, I don't think, but you can have clubs. But you've got the private sector now coming in, and that's the breath of fresh air is what's happening as well. More and more people are getting experience, and more people are growing. I've just had a word in my ear to say that we've now run out of time. Thank you so much, and I think you've given so many people on this call now that so much Great food for thought and how to get prepared, because that's what it's all about, is getting prepared. The ecosystem out there across the whole region is huge. But you've just got to make sure that you work 3 times as hard as everybody else. It's like you've just got to go out there and you've got to prove what you're worth. And you've got to focus on all those points that were spoke about today, because you've got to stand out about everybody else. Why should somebody believe in you? You need to stand out. You need to prove to people why you want that money and how you're going to turn it into profit. Anyway, thank you so much, panel, for coming on and taking part. I hope I filled the space. I hope somebody's going to take over from me now, but it's been an absolute pleasure being with you today.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, fellow panelists. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks, Avdesh. Thanks, Dr. Anna. Steve, I got to tell you, I mean, you are for us the Charles Dickens of Qatar, because anytime anybody needs to know every story that's out there in the Qatar startup ecosystem, you know it. And I think that's honestly what we need. I think what Qatar needs and ecosystems in MENA need is someone who is a prolific, storyteller of what's happening out there, because there is a lot of things that people don't get to know about what's happening in the region. So, Steve, to you, thank you for all that you do to promote VC's entrepreneurship in that particular region. It's been an absolute delight working with you over these years.
Mohsin, that's an incredible compliment that you've just paid. Thank you so much indeed.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great evening.
Thank you.